All right, guys, our next guest thinks Google Glass was ahead of its time, but he argues we could be closer to wearing technology than you actually think. Joining us now is Tony Mugavero. He's the CEO of Little Star. Tony, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. So you actually think that augmented reality is going to be driving the wearables market in the future. What makes you think that?
I do, although I'd say it's still a little early.
And so was Google Glass way before its time?
It was, I mean, from a price point perspective, and also, people out on the street like to look sexy and cool, and so having a weird looking device on your face isn't exactly that. So I think there's a number of things working against them. It was really a developer device geared towards the enterprise. And
but what makes you think things are changing now to where now all of a sudden it might be commonplace for us to have that?
Well, I think Apple is a great example with their release of ARKit, and that's the bigger news is probably the hardware support and minimizing of that hardware, and enabling a powerful enough experience in a very small device, and that's really where we've needed to go, because previously you've had to wear a big clunky device in order to get to that place, and that's where the challenge lies. So it started out as a whole room and then a device coming down out of the ceiling, and now it's gradually worked to a lighter wearable that still is pretty clunky, and that's progressing into what is probably I think the Snapchat spectacles were probably a good example of that, but even still there's not a lot of people wearing those out on the street. So we're getting there, and the technology is getting small enough and powerful enough, but it's still going to be a little bit of time, a few more years for wearables to really start making their way in terms of AR.
So I'm sorry to cut you off, but with the iPhone 8 and everybody waiting to get that, there's a lot of upgrades that Apple themselves are waiting for people to do. And the toolkit that is available for a lot of developers, as you mentioned, that's going to be rolled into that software. Is that what's going to lead to this wide adoption of AR at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think really what it comes down to is the ability to create augmented reality experiences has existed for years already, and in some places decades. And I think really what we're getting to now is powerful enough devices that everyone has in their pockets, and it's ultimately going to come down to the creators creating compelling experiences. I can go into the App Store right now and get an augmented reality experience on my phone today and have dinosaurs walking around on my coffee table. I think what Apple's really doing is pushing forward the sensors on the device and the chips that are able to power the recognition of reality and an overlay of objects on top of that at a much faster rate. So I do think that launches a bunch of new experiences that people then are building for the next 10 years or 20 years, and that is the catalyst. It's a big part of the catalyst. Google Tango is working on something similar, Microsoft with the HoloLens, and so those are all technologies where mobile is the clear mass market early adoption mechanism for that.
All right, let's talk about you guys in particular, Little Star. How are you guys progressing in the AR space right now with all these other competitors out there and all these other big guns that are doing it? What are you guys doing at Little Star?
Yeah. So we started out in the VR space, focused on virtual reality, and have always kind of considered ourselves to have an immersive DNA. So always thought that let's work with the dynamics that are in place today, and then as the space evolves over the next 10 years, let's evolve with it. And so we've started to think more about it like we're accepting, we distribute content for all the big studios and broadcasters directly in the Little Star apps, and that's been primarily 360 video, and we're now branching that out into interactive experiences and augmented reality. So through our same applications on iOS and Android, and also on the PlayStation VR and soon the Microsoft headsets, we're able to distribute all types of content that is immersive across devices. We've already gained the trust of the consumer. We've gained the trust of the content owners. We have official content agreements with all of the biggest content owners in the world, and are also partners with all the hardware makers. So to sit at the intersection of that trust, we're in a pretty good position to distribute all types of experiences, including AR and interactive experiences.
So thinking of some of those experiences, a lot of the media production companies have been the ones to really take advantage of this. But if we think about concerts, sporting arenas, if we think about the real estate market too, and how they're able to leverage some of this technology, especially thinking of 360 video too, have we really even scratched the surface of how they're leveraging it, and is there a lot of room for improvement within some of these additional industries and sectors?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a rapid evolution just over the last couple years even. It was originally panoramic photographers capturing this stuff, and then, you know, it evolved into indie game developers and now the big studios and broadcasters, and so it's evolved from a content perspective over time, and we're seeing continued investment in the space. I mean, DigiCapital had, you know, 800 million in Q2 of 2017 in the VR and AR space. You know, IDC has revenues doubling in the space until 2021. So, and that's, you know, not even including what Apple and Google and Amazon are all doing behind the scenes that nobody even knows about.
Right, but we look at like the expansion of the voice assistants. It's taken off so much because they've been able to have more expensive ones, and then also ones that are price affordable for pretty much anybody. You can get an Echo Dot for like $10 now. It feels like maybe 40, but still, with the VR headset and the wearables, your argument, which I think is totally valid, which is these things are way too expensive. You think of the Google Glass now, only hospitals are basically buying them because they're so expensive. But do you see I think because the product is so expensive, do you see a time where all of a sudden they can become affordable, that all of a sudden we're getting them for like $100 down the road?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's why mobile is kind of the gateway for that. It's something that you already have in your pocket. You've already subsidized it through your mobile plan. But you know, what we saw in VR was a similar thing, is that the Oculus Rift came out and it was $1,000 and you needed a high-end PC, and then the PlayStation VR came out and it was $400, and all of a sudden consumers bought more PlayStation VRs than the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive combined in a shorter period of time. And that all happened over the course of 2 years. So, you know, we're talking about the ability to hook your phones up to VR and AR, which, you know, that'll be mass market. And then, you know, the devices like Google Glass that were $1,600, or the Microsoft HoloLens, which was a $3,000 developer kit that's not going anywhere near a consumer's home. That was a couple years ago, and we're now starting to get to the place where we're seeing the price points get down to $900, $800.
And we'll just see it fall from there. Okay, we're out of time, but Tony Mugavero, he's the CEO over at Little Star. Thank you so very much.
Thanks
it's such
for
a
having
pleasure
me.
for talking.
Yeah, thanks, guys.